People often believe that silence is the weakest response you can give in a relationship. They think if you stop reaching out, stop explaining yourself, or stop asking for closure, you're simply giving up. They think silence means you lost interest, lost courage, or lost the emotional strength to keep fighting for the relationship. But psychologically, silence is one of the most disruptive things you can do to someone who has an avoidant attachment style. It removes the structure an avoidant person relies on to maintain emotional distance. When you stop chasing, you remove the emotional structure they rely on to keep distance. And when that structure disappears, something uncomfortable begins to happen inside their mind. When someone has an avoidant attachment style, their emotional strategy revolves around distance. They value independence, control, and emotional self-containment. Relationships can feel overwhelming to them, especially when someone seeks closeness, reassurance, or deeper communication. So they create space. Sometimes it looks like pulling away after intimacy. Sometimes it looks like becoming vague, unavailable, or emotionally quiet when things start to matter. And here's the part people misunderstand. As long as you keep reaching out, chasing clarity, or trying to repair the connection, the avoidant never has to confront their own emotions. Your effort becomes a buffer that protects them from self-reflection. But when you stop reaching out, the psychological dynamic changes completely. In most avoidant relationships, there is a predictable emotional pattern. One person pursues closeness while the avoidant withdraws. The pursuer sends messages, asks questions, tries to reconnect, or seeks reassurance. The avoidant responds with distance, delay, or emotional detachment. This dynamic creates a strange kind of emotional equilibrium. The pursuer carries the emotional work of the relationship, while the avoidant maintains control by staying just distant enough. Silence breaks that pattern. When you stop initiating contact, the avoidant suddenly loses the rhythm they relied on. There are no messages to ignore, no questions to deflect, no emotional conversations to escape. And without realizing it, they begin to notice something unusual. The person who once reached for them is now completely quiet. At first, many avoidants interpret this silence in the simplest possible way. They assume you moved on. They assume the connection simply faded. On the surface, this interpretation feels comfortable because it protects their independence. But psychologically, silence has a delayed effect. And that delayed effect is where real awareness begins. One of the defining traits of avoidant attachment is emotional suppression. It's not that avoidants don't feel things. It's that they learned early in life to push emotions aside in order to maintain stability and control. Research on attachment psychology shows that avoidant individuals often deactivate emotional responses during stressful relationship moments. When conflict appears or intimacy deepens, they shut down the emotional system that would normally process those feelings. This means something important. When the relationship is active, the avoidant may genuinely feel less emotional intensity than their partner. They may seem calm, detached, or unaffected. But emotions don't disappear simply because they're suppressed. They get postponed. And silence creates the conditions for those postponed emotions to resurface. When you stop reaching out, the avoidant no longer has a relationship situation demanding immediate emotional shutdown. The pressure is gone. The conflict is gone. The need to defend themselves from closeness is gone. And slowly, their mind begins to revisit what actually happened. Avoidant individuals often begin with curiosity rather than longing. Their mind doesn't immediately jump to emotional regret. Instead, it starts asking practical questions. Why did they stop contacting me? Did something change? Did I misread the situation? This curiosity matters because it forces attention back toward the relationship. The avoidant is now thinking about the connection voluntarily rather than defensively. Before silence, the relationship existed mostly in response to your effort. Now it exists inside their internal thoughts. And that internal reflection can be surprisingly uncomfortable. Because for the first time, the avoidant doesn't have someone else driving the emotional interaction. They are alone with their own interpretation of the relationship. One of the most powerful psychological effects of silence is contrast. When someone is constantly present, the mind adapts to their presence. Messages become routine, Conversations become expected. Even emotional effort becomes something the avoidant unconsciously takes for granted. But when that presence disappears completely, the mind begins to notice the absence. This is where avoidants often start recognizing things they ignored before. They may realize how often you initiated conversations. They may notice how much emotional stability you brought into their life. They may remember specific moments of connection that once felt overwhelming, but now feel meaningful. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as delayed emotional processing. When immediate pressure disappears, the brain can safely revisit emotional experiences without feeling threatened by them. And that distance often changes the interpretation of the relationship. What once felt suffocating can begin to feel significant. What once felt like pressure can start to feel like care. Why does silence remove emotional safety nets? Well, another reason silence affects avoidant individuals so strongly is that it takes away emotional certainty. As long as you kept reaching out, the avoidant knew something very important. They knew the relationship was still available. Even if they delayed replies or created distance, they understood that connection could be restored whenever they chose. But silence, it removes that safety net. Now, the avoidant cannot assume the relationship still exists. They can't predict whether you are waiting, healing, or honestly, moving on entirely. And, uncertainty has a powerful psychological effect. Avoidant individuals often manage relationships by controlling distance. But when silence appears, that control just disappears. The timeline is no longer theirs to manage. For the first time, they may realize that the relationship could genuinely be gone. And that realization can bring a surprising amount of emotional weight. It's important to clarify something here. Silence should never be used as a manipulation tactic designed to provoke a reaction. Psychologically healthy silence comes from a totally different place. It happens when someone stops chasing emotional availability that simply isn't being offered. Instead of arguing, explaining, or demanding clarity, they just step back and allow the relationship to reveal its true nature. That decision protects emotional energy. It also restores self-respect. And, kind of ironically, that same silence is often what allows avoidants to finally reflect on the connection without feeling pressured. But honestly, the outcome is never guaranteed. Some avoidants will reach new awareness and try to reconnect. Others will maintain distance because their attachment patterns haven't changed. Silence doesn't control someone's response, it simply reveals it. What does silence teach both people? For the avoidant, silence creates space to process emotions that were previously suppressed. For the person who stepped away, silence offers clarity about the relationship itself. It removes the exhausting cycle of pursuing someone who's emotionally unavailable. It stops the constant questioning about whether effort will ever be reciprocated. Instead, it allows reality to surface without interference. And sometimes, the most honest answer a relationship can give arrives through silence rather than conversation. Because when no one is chasing, explaining, or convincing anymore, people finally show who they are willing to be. If you find psychology like this fascinating, and you want deeper insights into how human behavior actually works beneath the surface, subscribe to It's All Psychological. Understanding the mind really does change how you see relationships, communication, and even your own emotional patterns. And if this perspective helped you understand silence, attachment, or human behavior in a new way, share this video with someone who values learning what truly drives the human mind.